Hey, I'm Minimaxing, and today I'm going to be building and painting Warhammer for the first time. I started mini-painting about 9 months ago, shout out to the Neon caster for showing me the basics, but I've been avoiding Warhammer because I didn't want to spend all my life savings on plastic crack. Because my Warhammer friends are bad influences, and I apparently have no impulse control, I bought a giant box rather than a single mini for my first time. After seconds, moments even, of research, I decided that my first Warhammer mini should be a Squig. Everything I've ever learnt about Warhammer lore has been against my will, but my current understanding is that Squigs are silly little mushroom dogs that can be shaped like anything. They seem deeply unserious, and I love that for them. I'm used to just buying pre-built minis or resin printing my own, so this entire build process is totally new to me. Okay, enough talking, time to get building. It was kind of like an advent calendar hunting down each numbered part on the sprue, so that was cute. Once the parts were cut out, it was time to clean them up by scraping off the jagged edges with a craft knife. Sometimes I didn't do a great job with the craft knife, so I kinda cheated and used an emery board to smooth everything out. There were some pretty noticeable mold lines, and I heard that you can use the back of the knife to scrape them off, but I tried this, and it literally did nothing, so if anyone's got any tips, please let me know. Once things were as good as I could get them, it was time to glue everything together. Citadel plastic glue smells weirdly good, but I would not recommend eating it. You should probably open a window too. I think I got a bit lightheaded while I was doing this. And here's the fully built mini. I love his silly little horn and his squat little body. He's so friend-shaped. Also, this is so much smaller than I usually work with. I think this mini is about 1/5 of the size of the Santa Barbarian I painted in my last video, so ironically this is a really big challenge for me. I primed it with Citadel Chaos Black primer spray and got ready to paint. I started with an all-over base coat of Vallejo game color in Midnight Purple. I generally paint dark to light, so I'm basically painting the light on to emphasize or create form. I like really saturated shadows, because I just think they're more fun to look at. I'd rather look at a blue or a purple than a dull grey or a black. I like to switch up the hue as I change the value, so I went for cooler shadows and warmer highlights. I feel like I spend a really long time on my base coats, and I'm trying to get over my perfectionist nature, so it can be a bit sloppier and speed up. This is all going to get covered with more paint anyway. While the purple base coat dries, I use ProAcryl Light Umber to base coat the teeth, the horn, and the claws. I thought I'd given the purple base long enough to dry, so I went in with Nocturnal Red pretty much all over the Squig, but I'd laid the purple on a bit too thick, and it was still kinda goopy. Turns out too thin coats isn't just a meme, it's genuinely good paint advice. Be patient and wait for your paint to fully dry before going in with more layers. While the red was drying, I went in with Ushabti bone to highlight the teeth, the horn, and the claws, focusing on the most raised areas and just gently tapping the teeth with the tip of the brush. For the horn, I wanted some extra contrast, so I just highlighted the ridges and then stippled on some paint for texture, leaving plenty of the base coat showing through. Next, I put some Mephiston Red on the palette, which is a lighter and warmer red. I mix that about 50-50 with the Nocturnal Red base for a more gradual transition, focusing on the raised areas where light would hit from above. I do multiple thin layers, slowly increasing the ratio of Mephiston Red to add more light, making the highlights smaller and smaller each time. Sometimes there's too much contrast between the highlights and the shadows, so what I do is take a mid-tone and thin it down to glaze consistency, and paint a light layer of that all over the area to smooth it out. It might look like I'm covering up all the work I've done so far, and honestly it still stresses me out when I do this, but sometimes you just have to trust the process. It all comes back once it dries, just a bit smoothed out. For the teeth, horn and claws, I mix in a little bit of pale sand and make tiny, sharp highlights on the high points. I definitely have a habit of overblending things, but shiny things have sharp, unblended highlights, so you just have to be confident and not overwork it. On the horn, I use the side of my brush to create some really thin, tight highlights along the ridges. For the final highlights on the skin, I add some Evil Sunz Scarlet using a tiny brush. I use a small brush for two reasons. Obviously, it's more accurate and you get some finer control, but the bigger reason is that it just helps me focus and reminds me to keep the highlights small and not get too carried away. Now that the highlights are getting pretty light, my brush strokes are really small. Sometimes I'm barely touching the tip of my brush to the mini. Because every mini is made better with Magenta, you can fight me on this. I'm bringing in Vallejo model color Magenta to paint the gums and add some neon pink eyes. We love a bold eye. I added Fulgrim pink for some bright gum highlights, but it looked a bit too high contrast and cool toned for my liking. So to fix that, I glazed over some magenta mixed with a touch of red to warm it up and make it look a bit less neon. To add some hue variation to the mini, I glazed over the underbelly of the squig with some magenta mixed with the midnight purple. To spice it up, I added some extra purple along the downward facing areas like the ridge of the tail. Oh, now this is my favourite part. This is my first Warhammer mini, and I wanted to make it special, so I decided to try some OSL, Object Source Lighting. I wanted to make the mushroom on the base glow and cast light on the squig. I based the mushroom with magenta and started slowly building up thin layers of purple and magenta on anything the light from the mushroom would touch, keeping the light brighter and warmer nearer the light source. Then for the final highlights, I dotted on some Fulgrim pink to the closest, most raised areas and the shiny areas like the claw. Now before I get to the final reveal, this entire building and painting process was streamed live on Twitch last week. I stream every weekday, 2 till 5 PM GMT, and I paint minis on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Come check it out, say hi, and maybe even paint along with me. I've got a pretty big pile of, potential, so I'm going to be making a big dent in it this year on stream. And now for the final reveal. I'm honestly so happy with how my first Warhammer mini turned out, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more to come, because I've bought so many more minis. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, consider subscribing and checking me out on Twitch. Keep on painting, have fun, and trust the process.